What is up, guys? Kit here, bringing you hopefully a short video on Acquiescing Rejection. Hard name to say. So I think this card, I think early on, a lot of people mistaken how powerful this card could actually be in the game. So I come from MTG background a bit. It was what I kind of learned my first TCG, but I didn't play that really competitively. But I did learn a lot of things from that game initially. And usually cards like this that give your opponent the option, they will always pick whatever is the best option for themselves. So I forget the name of the card, but there's a card in MTG where it's like, I forgot the exact wording, but I think it's a similar type of deal in a red deck. It's a fire card essentially that like negates something unless their opponent takes like 8 damage or something ridiculous like that. And 99% of the time, the card was just absolute dog water because your opponent will always choose whatever is the most beneficial for them in the moment. And kind of seeing this card, I've had the same reaction as well initially. Even some of my other MTG friends that do play this game, they all came to the same conclusion that, you know, this card isn't that very powerful because your opponent will always pick the option that's least or most beneficial for themselves. And that should make sense in theory. In practice, though, this card is actually way different. I think that kind of comes down to the fact that your influence in this game kind of dictates how many cards you can play a turn, and going up in card advantage is always very, very powerful in any card game. But because your cards in this game have a dual utility of being not only a way to play cards, but also more options for you to be playing, makes it kind of more awkward because it's not just like drawing lands and then playing the lands out and stuff like that. So the initial gut reaction I think a lot of people had was this card is bad because, one, if your opponent has the kill turn going and they're like, I don't know, like whatever, they just do a bunch of damage. They shimmer you something for like 10 damage, and you try to rejection it. They will always let you draw the 2 cards because it's beneficial for them to let you draw the 2 cards because you should lose the game if you don't have an answer to the damage coming through. In theory, that's kind of how it should be playing out. But like I said, in this game, how influence is so different and your hand size matters way more differently in this game compared to others. This card actually is way more powerful than I gave it credit, and I'm sure a lot of other people gave it credit to in the beginning, because you basically didn't really see this card until recently. I think the deck that really started pushing this card a little bit more was Water Seal. I see this in a lot of those types of decks, and because of that, it made me reevaluate this card and start playing with it again. And I soon realized that a lot of people look at this card incorrectly, and they just kind of write it off as a really bad negate card. And in reality, it's really, really powerful. So to kind of expand on that is, you got to first take your mindset off of like, this card is to negate cards. This card is not necessarily to negate cards. This card is what I would like to describe as like a road bump for your opponent. Not only are you trying to stop something powerful they're doing, but if they want to do it, they have to allow you to also go up in advantage as well. So I think the most easy example to talk about this card is that, for example, you're playing against a fire player and they try to creative shock at the end of their turn, or at the end of your turn. That's a really great time to cast rejection, because 99% of the time they will give you the draw too, and you're happy about that because not only are they getting some type of advantage for them playing the creative shock, you are getting payout for it as well. So it's kind of like we both got to draw our extra cards essentially. And then at the same time, if they choose to go 1 for 1 and just say, yeah, I accept the negate, you've slowed them down on their game plan. A lot of times, like, for example, them using the utility card will lead to dishing liminal guides or dishing floats to either level up at the start of their next turn for their materialization phase. But now you're putting this question in front of them and not only mentally taxing them, you kind of put them in this awkward position because of that, where they go, do I give my opponent card advantage as well? Or do I just say no and we both kind of slow down? But a lot of times the decks that do run rejection are decks that don't really necessarily look to turbo out to 3 or something like that, for example. So like, I played this very heavily in Kongming and I enjoyed it a lot. There are a lot of times where in certain play patterns you will see, especially in the early first couple turns, there are a lot of key cards like Creative Shock, you can rejection and expect to get a return of draw 2 from it. And the times you don't, you're totally fine with that, because going 1-for-1 and slowing you down your opponent's game plan is completely fine with you, because a lot of times, one, we're in water, which means we're playing for more of a mid-range to late game plan for the deck. And so we want to slow our opponent down as much as possible, because if they are in some type of aggro matchup or anything like that, then they're going to want to speed to their level 3s or whatever they're going to do as soon as possible. So even in the aggro matchups, this card isn't necessarily always the best card in the aggro matchups early on. But at least in the game 1, if you do decide to side these out because you think they're too slow and they cost too much in those matchups, a lot of times you just trying to negate some kind of threat off of the board means that they're going to let you draw the 2 as well, and hopefully that will draw you into an answer to deal with their board as well. This card should be viewed more as a potential draw 2 or a speed bump for your opponent to necessarily slow down their own game plan. You're not necessarily looking at to negate things that will do huge damage to you, or you're not looking to negate things that will end the game, essentially, because like I said early on, your opponent every time should just be like, yes, if this resolves, I win the game, therefore draw the 2 cards and see if you get what you need. It's nice in the late game where you try to rejection something because you don't have the answer and you draw into the answer sometimes, which happens sometimes, but it should not be your main game plan. This is a speed bump to stop your opponent. Obviously, this card works best into metas where other people are trying to get to level 3, which means they are playing things like Creative Shock, and they have like a somewhat mid-range to also late game game plan. But you hope that being in water and whatever champion you are on, that you're slowing them down or also accelerating yourself, means that you should come out ahead in the long term of the game, no matter what happens there. What's really nice about this card too is that against players that are not very familiar with the decision making with this card, will more often than not make the wrong decision. There are a lot of times where I've gone second with an 8-card hand, passed to my opponent, they try to create a shock at the end of their turn, I go rejection, they give me the draw 2 because they value being able to level up next turn or whatever they're trying to pitch into the graveyard. I rejection it, they let me draw 2. Now now I have 5 cards in hand because of that again, which lets me respond again with a second rejection. And a lot of times they've already dug themselves so deep by letting you have the first one, they will give you the second one as well, because they've already made the mistake of giving you the first draw 2. So in the end, you come out ahead that way. It doesn't happen very often, but drawing into two rejections like that, going second, does happen occasionally, and something to keep in mind as well. Because on those turns where you just go ham and get all the free draws from that, means even though you don't have float in the yard, you can easily level up or materialize something that does cost memory, essentially. You need to banish a card from memory for those effects, because you've essentially gone up 2 for playing these 2 of these back-to-back, which is insane. And any game where your opponent lets you resolve 2 rejections by drawing 2, you usually take control of that game very, very quickly. And you really quickly learn from their mistake of not letting you letting you draw 2, essentially. Some key cards that you always want to be looking out for to use rejection on are things like Dungeon Guide. Those are tempo cards that will accelerate their tempo, and so casting rejection on a Dungeon Guide, for example, is a very awkward spot. Sometimes they will give you the 2, but most of the time they will just be like, no, it's okay, we'll negate this, which now you've slowed them down. You've essentially negated a fake materialization phase, essentially, and forced them in a situation of either having a second Dungeon Guide, or they're going to have to use a materialization phase to now level up. And sometimes if they don't have the float set up for it, they end up banishing the 3 cards they put down for the Dungeon Guide, which means this 1 card now transitions into them losing 4 cards, basically, which is insane. Otherwise, they should be giving you the draw 2 as well, because usually if the people are Dungeon Guiding to level 3, their level 3 is what makes their deck super powerful. So things like that. Other cards to look out for, very common in this current meta, is we're seeing Lorraine and Merlins and stuff, and a lot of times they will use sweeps, to just clear up the board, especially going into level 2 Lorraine, because if they do sweep and kill multiple things, they're going to get multiple draws off of that. So casting a rejection in response to their sweep is they will always give you the draw 2, because they think in return they are going to get draws as well. And if you have if you have a play to stop them from getting their sweep off anyway, but you have the extra influence to present the rejection, you can always present the rejection and go, do I get a draw too? And if they say no, you're fine with that because now you saved your board. They don't get the draws from swinging with their attack. But if they give you the draw too, now, for example, if you had a Song of Frost in hand, and if by casting the rejection, all you had left was the Song of Frost, but then they give you the draw too from the rejection, now you can play Song of Frost to end the combat, and now they've lost out the sweep anyway, while also letting you go up on cards. It's like a really huge tempo swing in your favor. Not only are you not losing your board, you've got to draw extra cards off of it, and you stop their attack and wasted their turn, their entire game plan of going to level 2 and hopefully drawing like 2 or more cards off of their sweep. You got to keep those scenarios in mind. Once again, just to like hammer this home. This card is not about negating cards. This card is about putting your opponent in awkward scenarios to let you draw cards, essentially, and make it like letting their utility game plan match your game plan, essentially. So if they go up card, you're also going up a card. If they're going to go down a card, then you go down a card, essentially, with rejection. And at the end of the day, I think rejection works best in decks that have built-in engines to kind of keep your own hand advantage up, especially when you get into the late game. Because against a lot of good players should know, they should just accept that the card is getting negated like 90% of the time. There are, of course, scenarios where you just tell your opponent, go ahead, draw the 2, because what I am doing is going to be more powerful than you drawing 2 cards off of this card, and I need this card to resolve, essentially. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think a lot of people have the wrong mindset about this card and how to actually use it. This card isn't necessarily a real negate card. It's more of a speed bump or to match tempo with your opponent when they try to do something very powerful. In return, they have to grant you the ability to draw 2 cards to get their utility out as well. So like I said, it works best in decks that are looking to go long, looking to go to level 3 a lot of the times. The extra draws are very important. Influence is very important in a lot of these games. And the fact that you get to go up a card by using rejection against your opponent feels really powerful. If you haven't tried this out in your water decks, and you're more of a late game water deck, which I think at this point, most water decks are pretty much late game, mid-range to late game deck strategies, try rejection out. It's a very good card. You get free wins versus opponents that just don't understand how to play the sub game in this when you cast this and like present them the question, draw 2. And against good players, if you play it correctly into specific things that need to either be negated or at least let you go up in some type of advantage, then you will always get a good payoff. You always get, if you know what you're looking to negate with rejection, no matter what your opponent picks, you should always come out ahead, is what my feeling is on this card. And I feel like after playing this card so much, that rings true, essentially. But yeah, hopefully this gets you guys on the path of either using rejection or at least understanding the sub game that comes with it when it comes to choosing what to negate and when to, and like choosing whether your opponent draws 2 or you should negate your card. I'm going to tell you right now, the heuristic you can go by is like 99% of the time, or like maybe 90% of the time, you should just choose to get your card negated. Because usually if you give them the draw 2, they are also trying to do something very powerful, and you are, unless you know for a fact the thing you are casting needs a resolve to do something very powerful for yourself, sometimes just taking the extra turn off is more beneficial for you than giving your opponent the draw 2, because not only are you slowing yourself down, you're also slowing your opponent down as the person getting the rejection. But yeah, with that being said, hopefully this kind of opens your eyes a little bit more to using this card. Definitely a card worth testing out in decks that go high influence, decks like Kong Ming, Water, Merlin, and stuff like that. Decks that have really good draw engines. Getting pretty big, fat hand sizes makes this card even easier to cast in the mid game when you're sitting with like a 10 card hand. Being able to just throw this out on anything essentially is going to be okay. But yeah, with that being said, guys, hopefully I've enlightened you a little bit. Let me know in the comments below. Maybe you guys had some crazy rejection plays that I want to hear about, because I do really enjoy this card. I ended up picking up 4 foils at Niagara when I went. Very happy with them, and I'm sure I'm going to be playing this card a lot into the future. With that being said, guys, if you like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, help the channel grow and all that. Hopefully see you guys in another event or another video. Later, everyone.